I saw him, frozen, guilt written all over his face. I still hear the sound of that food flask hitting the floor. The woman looked at me and asked, "Who are you?" And I replied with a calm I didn't feel, "I'm the woman who believed him." Then I turned and walked away. That day, as I rode home in silence, I realized something. Heartbreak doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just quietly breaks you from the inside. I didn't cry that day. Not until Annabelle asked me, "Mummy, why are your eyes empty?" I knew then that I couldn't let this break me. I had survived worse. The following week, I went to work as if nothing had happened. My performance even got sharper. My boss noticed. "You're glowing, Mabel," he said one morning. I smiled. If only he knew that sometimes the glow is fire burning quietly behind your ribs. I poured everything into my work. Within a year, I became the creative director of the agency. Me, the girl from Mushin. The single mother people had written off. The woman who used to count coins for bus fare. I began traveling across Nigeria, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Enugu, handling campaigns and training young creatives. Each time I stood on a stage to speak, I would see faces in the crowd, women who looked just like me. And I would tell them, "You don't need to come from privilege to shine. You only need to refuse to quit." But even in success, I felt a lingering loneliness. I wanted to love again, but my heart had become cautious, guarded. It's funny how pain can teach you to build walls where windows should be. Then one day, while working on a social impact campaign in Abuja, I met Tom. He was a photographer, quiet, brilliant, with eyes that noticed the small things. He didn't try to impress me, he just saw me. He'd ask questions like, "When last did you rest?" Or, "What do you dream about when you're not chasing deadlines?" I laughed the first time he asked that. "Rest? I don't even remember what that means," I said. But Tom wasn't in a hurry. He became my friend, my calm in a city that never stops running. We worked together often, and soon I realized that his presence brought peace, not pressure. Annabelle liked him immediately. "Mummy, this one looks like he can fix things," she said one evening when he came to drop off some photos. I laughed, but her words stayed with me. Tom didn't come with promises of perfection. He came with patience. He understood that I wasn't just a woman, I was a survivor. And survivors don't need rescuing, they need partnership. Still, part of me hesitated. What if this ends like before? What if peace is just the calm before another storm? But Tom taught me something I'll never forget. One night, while we sat on the balcony watching Abuja's city lights flicker, he said, "Mabel, strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about trusting that you can rebuild every time." That night, I cried for the first time in years. Slowly, I began to let love back in. Life started to balance again. My career was thriving. Annabelle was growing into a bright young girl. And for the first time in forever, I felt like I could breathe without waiting for something to go wrong. But fate, it seems, always has one more test to give. One evening, while driving home from a meeting in Lekki, I got a call from the hospital. My mother had collapsed. They said it was her heart. By the time I reached the hospital, she was lying there, pale but smiling weakly. She took my hand and said, "Mabel, don't cry. You've done more than I ever dreamed. I'm proud of you." I told her not to talk like that I still needed her, that Annabelle needed her. She just smiled again and whispered, "You already have everything you need." She passed away that night. Grief came like an old enemy, familiar and unkind. For weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. The world lost its color. Tom stayed by my side, quiet but constant. Annabelle would crawl into my arms and whisper, "Grandma is with Daddy now." One day, I went through Mama's old things. I found her worn-out Bible with notes in the margins. On one page, beside Isaiah 60 verse 1, she had written, "Arise, my daughter, your light has come." Those words reignited something inside me. I decided to start something new, a foundation in her memory, to help young girls from low-income homes learn digital skills. I named it the Annabelle Initiative, after my daughter, because the fire must continue through generations. We started small, 10 girls in a community center in Yaba. But within a year, we had trained over 200. I watched them come alive, their eyes bright with dreams they never thought possible. Every time I stood before them, I would tell my story. How I watched the rain as a child in Ibadan. How Lagos tried to break me. How love both hurt and healed me. How I found my voice, not in perfection, but in persistence. Because the truth is, I am not extraordinary. I am just someone who refused to stay broken. Sometimes I look back and wonder how a girl from the muddy streets of Mushin became the woman whose name people mention in boardrooms and headlines. It still feels surreal, like a dream that took too long to arrive. After launching the Annabelle Initiative, everything changed. The foundation drew attention. Journalists, NGOs, even government agencies wanted to feature our story. They called me the woman who turned pain into purpose. At first, I smiled politely when they said it. But inside, I knew pain never really disappears. It just changes shape. One day, I got a call from a woman named Kate Brainerd, a well-known talk show host in Lagos. She wanted to feature me on her show. When I walked into the studio that day, my heart was pounding. The lights were blinding, the cameras intimidating. "Welcome, Mabel," she said, smiling. "Tell us how you became the woman you are today." I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I told the world everything. The hunger, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the nights I almost gave up. By the time I finished, there were tears in people's eyes, even behind the cameras. That episode went viral within days. Suddenly, my social media blew up. Invitations poured in from schools, churches, conferences, even international organizations. Everyone wanted Mabel, the survivor, the storyteller. I became a public speaker almost by accident. But with each stage I stood on, I found my voice growing stronger. I began to realize that my story wasn't just mine. It was a mirror for others who had forgotten how strong they were. I started traveling across Nigeria, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Benin, sharing my message. You can come from nothing and still become everything. But with fame came pressure. Endless interviews, speaking engagements, sponsorship deals. It was overwhelming. My schedule became a storm. Annabelle would sometimes say, "Mummy, you're always working. When will you rest?" And I'd reply, "Soon, my love." Soon. But soon never seemed to come. Then one day, while preparing for an event in Abuja International Conference Center, I collapsed backstage. The doctors said it was exhaustion. My body had been running on empty for months. I remember lying in that hospital bed, watching the white ceiling blur above me, and thinking, so this is what happens when you keep saving others but forget yourself. Tom was there again, as always. He sat by my bed, holding my hand. "You need to breathe, Mabel," he said softly. "You've been carrying the world for too long." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. For the first time, I allowed myself to just be human, not a hero, not a warrior, just Mabel. After I recovered, I took a 3-month break. I traveled to Calabar with Annabelle and Tom, away from the noise of Lagos. We spent days by the water, eating roasted fish, laughing, healing. I watched Annabelle chase waves, her laughter echoing across the shore, and I thought, this is what life should feel like. That trip changed me. When I returned to Lagos, I restructured everything. I hired a team to run the foundation so I could focus on balance. I started journaling again, spending more time with my daughter, and saying no to things that didn't serve my peace. It was around that time that I received an email from the African Women in Leadership Forum. They wanted to honor me with an award for outstanding contribution to women empowerment in Nigeria. I sat in front of that email for a long time, remembering the days I could barely afford transport fare. The nights I studied with candlelight while Annabelle slept beside me. The days I almost quit. And now, here I was, invited to stand among women I had once admired from afar. At the ceremony, I wore a deep emerald gown that flowed like water. As I walked onto the stage to receive my award, flashes from cameras filled the room. But all I could see was my mother's face in my memory, smiling from heaven. When it was time for my speech, I looked out at the audience and said, I am not standing here today because I never fell. I'm standing because every time life knocked me down, God gave me a reason to rise again. To every woman out there who feels unseen, unheard, unappreciated, please know this. Your story is not over. The world may try to define you by your pain, but you can rewrite your own chapter. The hall erupted in applause. And in that moment, I knew this is why I survived. But life, as always, had another curveball waiting. Not long after that event, a scandal hit the media. A blog accused my foundation of mismanaging funds. I was blindsided. Headlines screamed, Mabel's NGO under investigation. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. People who once praised me began to whisper. Sponsors pulled out. It felt like being dragged through fire. I called an emergency meeting with my team. We reviewed every record, every receipt. Everything was clean. But truth doesn't always spread as fast as lies. For weeks, my name trended online for all the wrong reasons. I cried till my eyes ached. Tom held me one night and said, "You can't fight rumor with rage."